Hello, my name is Deirdre Harris Kelly, and I'm one of the co-directors of the Romare Bearden Foundation. On behalf of my co-director, Joanne Bryant Reed, and our board of directors, I want to welcome you and thank you for joining us this evening. So for those of you who are joining for the first time, this is a part of our series of the Cinque Artist Program. And this program comes out of the making of the nonprofit, the Cinque Gallery, that was organized and developed by artist Romare Bearden, Norman Lewis, and Ernest Critchlow. This was found in the 1960s, late 60s, and their first exhibition was 1969. This was an opportunity for young artists and curators of color to display their work and to have greater opportunities with an audience. So today, our Cinque program will have the speaker, Phillip Smallwood. He will join me for a conversation. And afterwards, we will leave time for a Q&A, a live Q&A if you'd like. And so if you have any questions or comments, you can put them in the Q&A section of the program. All of you know how to do that now. So shout out to us. Let us know you're listening. Let us know where you're listening from. But more importantly, listen closely and develop some questions so we can have a nice, lively conversation with Phillip Smallwood. So just a little bit about Phillip. He's a New York-based watercolor artist known for his ultra-realistic nature in his paintings. He brings a unique texture and depth to his creations. Inspired by light and details of humans and architectural elements, it gives a very unique dimension to his artistic vision. For more than 25 years, the artist has been creating what he calls lifescapes, portraying subjects within their natural environment with a very emotive visual narrative that connects the viewer and the subject with the intimacy of a friend. Smallwood blends imagination, reality, and social consciousness to transform ordinary scenes into enduring narratives that embrace real people living real and unrehearsed lives. Growing up in Roxbury, Massachusetts, he learned the art of furniture making, studying the craftsmanship of his father. He also found inspiration in the Southern genre. Many of his family members migrated from Boston to the Carolinas and from Boston to the Carolinas and Florida. So he is naturally gravitated towards subjects that emerge from this rich cultural heritage. Through his art, he explores the stories and traditions that have shaped these regions, capturing their essence and authenticity and reverence. Many of the artist's works are in private collections of prominent art enthusiasts, including corporate executives and celebrities in sports and entertainment. Smallwood has gained widespread recognition and acclaim, earning over 200 juried awards throughout his career, exhibitions in esteemed artistic venues, honors from prestigious watercolor societies, and numerous features in art publications around the world. A recent solo exhibition at the Butler Institute of American Art The recent exhibition at the Butler Institute of American Art has Smallwood as the first African-American artist in its 106th year history of the institution. So we want to ask Phil a lot about that. But to start off, I want to just invite Phillip to join us. And he's on camera now. Hi, Phillip. I want to thank you so much for joining us this evening. We've been looking forward to talking with you. And of course, the way that we open it is always to ask you, please tell us about yourself, how you got started as an artist, and tell us some of your early influences.
Well, thank you, Deidre, for that very heartfelt introduction. I appreciate it. Most of it was accurate. And it's a pleasure being with you folks this evening. And of course, Romare Bearden being one of our godfathers, so to speak, in the African American art genre. It's quite a privilege to be with you guys this evening. And to open just a little bit about how I sort of got involved in this pursuit. It was really not a conscious decision to become a fine artist.
Hmm.
Um, my late brother, Frederick Smallwood Jr., was a fantastic artist and an adept draftsman. And I really saw his work at a young age and never thought much about it. I guess, like most kids, running out, playing ball, and getting involved in sports and these kinds of things. But that influence actually was very impactful. And it really stayed or remained dormant for several years. In fact, 38 years of age is when I first picked up the paintbrush seriously. And of course, he was my initial influence. And quite honestly, if it wasn't for my exposure to his work and him in my world, I don't think I'd be having this conversation with you right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And sometimes people refer to you as the Black Norman Rockwell. So, I mean, tell us a little bit about that influence on your work and or the influence of that being said about you. What do you feel about that?
Well, that's far too lofty in terms of my comfort, but quite an acknowledgement just that people are resonating with the work. And as you well know, Rockwell was a master at creating the narrative, and essentially it was the American family. And what I took away from that is the storytelling aspects of his work, and they stood alone in that regard.
Mhm.
So I kind of, not knowingly, but my work leans on a very narrative thread. And he is just one of those, one of those people that I look up to tremendously in terms of having influenced what I do today.
Mhm. And other artists like Andrew Wyeth, Thomas Eakins, right?
Absolutely. Well, they're all what you would call technicians. They're very adept draftsmen, and I was always attracted to that very high level realism. And it's not easy, and I'm up always up for a challenge, and that sort of was, sort of my bar in terms of personally challenging myself with each and every subject and trying to push a little bit further.
Mm-hmm. 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 Well, tell us some of your favorite subjects and topics to paint.
I guess in retrospect, you would have to. Uh, Children, absolutely, very early interest and remain so to this day. I more or less gravitate toward the young and the old. I'm starting to, change that up because as you see, these the body of work, there's some holes in it, and those holes are not enough young people or moderately aged folks. So I'm consciously working on pieces that speak to those groups as well.
Well, let's look at a few works. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. Yes, one of my favorites here.
Well, this piece, Desire, is a special piece, and this is going back to, I believe this was created in the mid '90s. So this piece is quite old, and this was really, um, I won't say my first attempts at watercolor, not close, but my earlier work. And what I was really striving for and still strive for is that personal connection in the work. So that's something that's very important to me as an artist, that I'm able to hold your attention. And typically that's done by layering, washes, detail, uh, the dry brush elements of the work, and those sorts of things. And obviously the composition always plays a role. And this piece is well traveled and is highly decorated. So this is one of my earlier works that I would conclude was successful.
And when you say earlier work, so you're talking about the 60s, the 70s?
No, I didn't start watercoloring until 1995. So this is probably 96, 97 in that area of time. So relatively early on, this is when I was really heavily competing in the Watercolor Society's juried events. So that was really how I cut my teeth.
Let's go to the next one. Yeah.
Green goggles. What makes this piece so special is I grew up in Massachusetts and we summered in Martha's Vineyard. And these pieces are from the vineyard. The Inkwell, as a matter of fact, which maybe you guys are familiar with, is a very famous location on the vineyard that has really been a meeting place for Black folk for a long time. I would say close to 100 years. So not only is this a beautiful piece, it speaks to the environment that I kind of grew up in and personally have a special fondness for.
And so in this work, I mean, what captures you in terms of this subject of this little boy? I mean, is it the composition? Is it the green goggles? What is it that you look for when you choose your subjects?
Well, as a figurative painter, the human body is your conquest. So obviously, you can't get much more body than this particular pose here. So just from that perspective, showing the entire body is something that I'm very interested in. So again, this is sort of in keeping with my general interest as a figurative person, but again, mixing in some of my earlier, I would say adolescent, it brings back adolescent memories of my time on the vineyard. And I frequent the vineyard still to this day. So there's a lot of things that go into deciding to do an image. And sometimes it's a light, sometimes it's a subject, sometimes it's the location, sometimes it's mood, sometimes it's the character of the person you're trying to capture. So I mean, the language is infinite in terms of what potentially might end up on my board.
On your easel, yes.
Yes.
Yes. Let's go to the next one. Yeah. The feeling in this just really lifts me up. Just the color, the details in the hair. How do you get this? Give us a sense of scale and color, whether or not you're painting from life or, are you informed by photographs? How do you make this?
Well, I'm essentially a studio artist. I'm not a plein air guy because my process is relatively lengthy. Now, what I will do on site or at the scene sometimes, if I have time, is I will cobble up some sketches, some working sketches, because there typically isn't time. I mean, the sun is moving. Think about this: the sun is moving so rapidly in the course of a piece. You unless it happens in a couple of hours, your entire lighting scheme has changed.
Right.
So, and this piece is a little bit different. It's a little bit looser than it's more on the study side, something I'm trying to capture the mood more than I am trying to create a technical masterpiece. And these two young ladies are sisters too. And that bond between sisters is a very special thing. And just hopefully within the painting, you can sort of feel that special connection amongst these two young girls.
Tell us a little bit about your process. I know that you only produce maybe 10 to 12 works a year, and you do a lot of layering. How much time does it take to make a painting like this?
Well, 10 to 12 those are identifying the major works. This would not fall into that category. This is more on the study side of the spectrum, a quicker work, a preparatory work in leading up to something a little bit more finished. But some of these works can take weeks, if not months. Now, that piece we just looked at was not one of those pieces, but the prior piece was. Not Green Goggles, but Desire. So, I
Yes.
mean, it can be anywhere from a couple of days to a couple of months. That typically, and photography also is a big part of my process because obviously, I'm capturing these folks through photography and then taking this stuff back to the studio and comprising the actual work.
And when you take the photographs, are you already thinking about composition, or does that happen in the studio?
Absolutely. Because given my lack of prolific output, I have to think about ways that I can increase the amount of works that I produce a year. And one of those things is learning to direct and compose with the camera versus preparatory sketches, which can take a lot of time. So I've over the years have learned how to build my scene, including the light, the shadow, cast shadows, because I'm big into daytime subject matter and outdoor subject matter. So these are the things that I often not respond, but relate to as the jewelry in the piece, the things that really make it exceptional. So there's a lot that goes into the actual work.
I like that you say the jewelry in the piece.
Yes, yes, because the piece isn't finished. And the other thing is great works are accomplished, I believe, in the last 5% of the piece. So, you're not going to get to the great work on the front end. So it's a process. And that jewelry is the last 5%. That's my attempt to take it over the top.
Wow. Okay. I wonder exactly what that means in terms of I know I said to you earlier how watercolor just seems to be one of those very hard mediums to work in. And so what are those finishing touches that highlight? How do you add that to a work in watercolor at the last minute? I mean, the last 10%.
Well, there are stages, and I lean on the dry brush side of the genre. And what that means is that I typically am painting with a lot less water than your typical watercolorist. So what does that mean? That gives me a greater level of control with the work. It allows me to slow the work down. It allows me to be in the driver's seat because if you're just wet on wet washes and throwing color in there and hoping for happy accidents, that really isn't my approach to the work. I approach it almost like an oil painting where I'm working very light and scumbling early on, and each layer has to dry unless I want a wet on wet effect, which of course I have to do from time to time in the watercolor genre. But primarily, I'm working dry. So your question was, how do you get to those very finite details? You have to get there very dry, I will tell you that. So now we're talking smaller brushes. And this sort of goes against I would guess your typical formal art education. And I guess most artists would tend to lean on working with a bigger brush, thereby covering more territory and quicker than the most tedious route, my route, and saving those whites, because as you know, preserving the whites in watercolor is
That's
the
right.
name of the game.
That's right. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, yeah.
So
And a bunch of masking fluid too, and masking items too. First of all, you got to protect the work through the process. One spill in the wrong place is game over.
yes, yes.
So I mean, there's just a lot of little things you learn through the process. And you know what? It's not because I didn't learn to paint with acrylic or oil or any other painting medium. I don't really, I don't look at watercolor as being that difficult. Like anything else, mastery takes a lot of time, regardless of your medium. So I would put more emphasis on the time you put in and your work habits versus how tough the medium is. I want you to focus on that particular aspect.
Yes, yes. All right. Okay, and so you never learned to work in acrylic or oil on purpose. You met watercolor and you've just been friends forever.
Fell in love. Fell in love. Yes,
Okay.
that's exactly how it happened. And that might be a good thing because something can be said for learning on your own. It is the most elongated process, but you tend to find your voice a little bit quicker. Because I know in formal educations, oftentimes it's, you know, you're trying to emulate the instructor's viewpoint, how he sees the work, and trying to impress that individual versus, you know, finding out what's important to you as the artist. So I think having been primarily self-taught has actually become advantageous, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does. It does. All right, let's look at another piece. And let me know whether this to me seems so realistic. Is this a person? Was this, I know you do a lot of commissions. So is this something that was requested of you?
No,
Oh.
actually, you know, I didn't tell you guys this, but back in the day, I was in my furniture days and architectural millwork days. I did a lot of building, and this young gentleman here was involved with one of my projects. Okay, so after the project was over, I asked him if he might be interested in doing some modeling for me. I told him I was an artist, this, that, and the other. So that's how this became to be. And this is a series of work. And as you notice, this is very different from some of the other things that were on screen earlier. This is inner city. This is the Bronx. So this has a totally different kind of flavor. And no pun intended, the name of the piece is Flavors.
Or pun intended.
but I wanted to just because my work had been primarily Southern genre, I wanted that inner city thing in a bad way. So this series is ongoing, and I hope to do about 20 pieces with this same individual. So look for more of this in the future.
Right. So about what size is this painting?
This is typical watercolor sheet, a large sheet, 22 by 30. This is typical. And this is a good sized work. This is several weeks of production.
It's beautiful. Beautiful.
Thank you.
Let's see the next one. Just lovely the way the shirt blends right into the background and the color and the mood that you caught this man waiting or sleeping. Yes. Tell us
And
about this.
I think it's pretty obvious to discern here that, you know, I do have a large or well-developed interest in architecture. So that piece and even the brick scheme, I mean, people don't tend to spend that kind of time on those aspects of the painting. But for me, this is really a glimpse of history. Because think about this painting 200 years from now. Not only have I depicted the subject, But now the architectural elements come into play. There are people out there that can tell you just by looking at this entryway, this limestone entryway, about when the building was built.
Mhm.
And as a historical record, I think my paintings would fit into that description relatively neatly because
Mhm.
I'm so keen. And think about this: in my prior business, which was furniture, custom cabinetry, and millwork, these doors are something that I've done,
Mhm.
literally built from scratch for
Mhm.
these kinds of projects. So, when I'm painting with that kind of sense of information. I'm not painting just to, depict the door here. This door opens, it closes, there's a bell, there's
Mhm.
signage on the inside of the glass,
Yeah.
there's this, there's that. I mean, the Corinthian capitals at the top of the columns. I mean, all of these things
Mhm.
are elements that I'm keenly aware of and have dealt with in my professional capacity. So,
Yes.
I hope to convey that kind of information to the viewer.
Well, it reminds me a little bit of a quote that Bearden says about, I'm paraphrasing here, about capturing a sense of life or capturing a place that's disappearing. That
Absolutely.
is something that he wanted to do in his work, was to show this. And it's true. I mean, a lot of what he was doing was out of time,
Mhm.
because he would paint from his memory. And, a lot of those sort of Southern scenes were done in the 70s and 80s when he's in his Canal Street studio. So
Mhm.
yeah, it does give you that sense of time and space. It's a historical document. I love
Exactly.
it.
And
Mhm.
then I approach the work that way. And
Mhm.
that's probably why it takes me forever.
Mhm. Mhm. Let's go on to the next one.
Okay. Uh,
This is interesting.
there's a lot going on in this piece. And
Mhm.
just as a little backstory, I had an exhibition in Charleston many years back. And, you're in town for a couple of days and I'm running around the town and I see this kid selling these, what they call these, they're frond palms.
Hmm.
And they bend them up and twist them up into little roses, right? And so he was selling these things. And I had previously come across this Victoria's Secret window
Mhm.
like a day before, and I saw the kid in the red jacket. They were not in the same location, so I talked to him, told him what I was doing, said, "Listen, man, if I could only get you over to King Street, which is where Victoria's Secret was, I'd love to get a couple pictures of you." So he was kind enough to grant me that, and the reason this piece, first of all, I thought it was too much, and when I say too much, um, sometimes as artists, we get intimidated by the level of technical accoutrement in a work. And I said, man, there's so much going on that's going to be hard to successfully replicate.
Right.
But, I'm one of those guys that can put several hundred hours into a piece. And I
Mhm.
don't remember exactly how many hours inclusive of this piece, but it was the lace, it was the color, it was a reflection off the window, it was this huge white woman, and people, I have to tell people this is a poster because there's no way this could be life given the scale of his head, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So there was just so many things that attracted me to this work. It was a technical, um, it was one of those things. Well, listen, if you can capture it, it's going to be special. I didn't know that I could,
Mhm.
and I'll leave that up to the audience whether or not I got it.
Okay. All right. We'll probably get some questions about that. All right. Let's move on to the next one.
Okay,
Going
this is
home.
a more recent image, and this is the origin of this piece is I think this is Bridgehampton. This is on Long Island, and
Mhm.
again. I'm going to an exhibition. I'm getting in town a little early, and I see this gentleman at the bus stop. So of course I got my camera in tow. I jump out the car. I start talking to him, tell him what I'm doing. I said, listen, can I get a couple of shots of you? And the reason I love this, again, the architecture. I mean, he's absolutely stunning as well. But the architecture really brings him to the forefront of the painting. And you see there where the two window panels are coming together there. That absolutely sort of aligned him in a manner that I was fascinated with. And just as a matter of fact, if you look up into the upper right-hand corner, I don't know if you can see it or not, and just a little bit down low in the left too, there was Christmas lights strung around the interior of this was a restaurant behind him. And you can see here just a little bit of the open 7 days. And see, those are the kind of details that I love because it's just enough information to pull you in.
Yeah.
And one other note, this jacket, this leather jacket, that's a 3 to 4 week jacket in terms of time out, because I wanted the age of the jacket. I wanted you to be able to smell that leather. And that sounds crazy, right?
No.
But that's what I'm shooting for. So, and again, I'll let the audience be the judge, but
I think you hit it. I think you nailed it.
It's a beautiful piece.
I love the kind of 3 dimensions that you the dimensions, meaning, you see him in the forefront, you see the reflection in the glass, and then you see the interior of that storefront. So that's just amazing to me that you got all of that in, and it's sort of it feels very cubistic to me, that we can see all of these different things, all these different perspectives at the same time.
And another thing, what makes a great painting? A great painting, in my opinion, is a painting that you see something different every time you view it. There's a little piece of information that you didn't get the first time.
Right.
And it just keeps on giving. So I think this piece is special. And
all right.
I think it's right there.
And would you say, I mean, this term lifescapes that you use, tell us a little bit about that.
That essentially means that I put almost the same level of intensity and scrutiny on the background as I do the subject themselves.
Okay.
And part of the rationale for that is that if it's just the subject, there really is, it's not grounded. Okay, and it doesn't give you the full story. Or sometimes the subject is very loosely done and doesn't give you the complete story, or it gives you a glimpse of the story. I'm trying to go a little bit deeper with my subjects, and I almost want you to know that you feel as though you know this guy. And I've had commentary, and that's when I know an image is successful. When you get comments like, because I share these with friends, and Phil, that's the brother next door.
Yeah.
That's the dude I work with. It's those types of things that make me think and make me feel that my work is resonating with the audience.
Yes. Okay. I want to save time to talk about your big project, but I think we have a couple more other works. I just want to make sure that we cycle through. I think we have some landscape. Yeah.
We do. And we'll go over this pretty quickly, but I'd say for the last 3 years, I've become more interested in large scale landscapes. And I wasn't initially, but an opportunity came up in Maine, and I started capturing these large scale landscapes, and I absolutely loved it. And I'm a representational painter. So I want to be able to touch everything or anything, any location that you could possibly go, or anything that you might possibly see. Architecture, water, glass,
Mhm.
mountainscapes, skies, interior finishes. That's my world,
Right.
and I want to bring it to you.
And large scale, what is
Large
this?
scale. This is probably 60 inches tall.
Wow.
Yeah, so this is, and I refer to this piece as this. If I had to break it down, this is shingle technology, and we won't go into it, but you can imagine it's a thing.
Okay. Okay. All right. And so that large of a size, is that still on paper or canvas?
These all the watercolor to date. Now, people are watercoloring on canvas. I have yet to do that. All of these works are on paper.
Okay. Okay. All right. And let's get the other landscape in there. Yeah, because this is mesmerizing.
Now, this is 400 plus hours too.
Mhm.
Because obviously the key to this thing is the depth of perception,
Mhm.
and the different frames of perception that you're are looking at individually. So I want to take you there. I mean, you won't get to the underside of this pier.
Mhm.
I don't think it's somewhere obscure up in Maine somewhere, but I just want to be able to impart the feeling, um, of being there, and actually experiencing this thing. So from the moss on the pillars to the reflections in the water to the boats to the left and right, well, to the right, the descending. Can you see the descending walk, the plankway?
Yes. Yes.
So I mean, all of these things, the reflection of what's around these piers, because you see here there's some sort of, it looks like hieroglyphics on the
Mhm.
things, but they're actually reflections some of the sail masts and that sort of thing. So that's my
Yeah.
world.
And again, you're documenting and displaying for us and telling the story of this space in such a way that we really can feel it. I mean, it feels soft and mossy, and it feels wet. And it feels like it's never ending, like you could walk through there for hours under that pier. So I love that.
The only thing I couldn't add was the saltwater smell, and if I could have, I would have. So
Yeah.
that's really what I'm shooting for in the work.
Mm-hmm.
Not
Mm-hmm.
photorealism, but high level realism.
Right, right. And in some ways, this can kind of segue when we talk about the kind of subjects that you choose and what you're aiming for, a kind of reality, and a kind of documentation, that it's an engagement with socially, and many of the social engagements that we see in art, some of them are very literal. You do it in a way that is a little different, by, again, like Bearden does, by documenting these people that are real people. They're living real lives. I love that. Living real, unrehearsed lives. And that's important, that these people are seen in that way. But the next project, or the project that most recently sort of really engages socially, is the project with the Theodora Smiley Lacey portrait. And not only just creating a portrait, which you've done a lot of, but also putting this onto a tour, creating a whole tour around it. Now, that is amazing. So tell us about that.
Well, we are in the process, in the throes of the tour, because this is probably going to, I would say, be a 2-year project or close to that in terms of start to finish.
Mhm.
And let me just go back to speak about Theodore just a little bit, if I could.
Mhm.
This for me was like the holy grail of subjects. And what do I mean by that? There was every box that I could potentially think of was checked off with this particular artwork. And I'll tell you why. How often is it you get to work with somebody? First of all, I have a 25-year relationship with this woman. Okay, that's number one. So there's an intimate knowledge of who she is. Two, her life and her life story is bigger than life. I had no idea of this woman's accomplishment, the the civic initiatives that she has not only initiated but seen through, uh, the lives that she has touched, uh, all of that. I mean, it's just it's an avalanche of material. So what do you do with that? What do you do with the perfect subject?
Mhm.
You put 450 hours in it. That's what you do. And you start this thing like it's going to the Met. Now, when I started this project, I had no visions of a tour, of this kind of social engagement, um, actually bringing her story to life. I was just thrilled with the opportunity to paint Theodora Lacey. So consider, if you will, all of those things. I mean, it just built to this crescendo. And I must have known something. This is where the subconscious mind um, plays a role in artwork. Something told me that this was more important than even I realized. And what I mean by that is, when something is important, you got to slow it down, right? Because you can't afford to go in the wrong direction. There's so
Mhm.
much time invested that every critical decision has to be thought, rethought, and thought again. So imagine this process. So the background of this image, which is her accolades, her life. This is the title of the piece, is The Life of Service. And I thought it was absolutely apropos to show her in her space with some of her commendations, just to give the world a sense of who she is and what she's done. So just the background was, oh,
Yeah.
I want to
Mm.
say 4 weeks before I even got to her, touched her. But how do you know? As an artist, how do you know? You have to slow this thing down. This maybe one of the most important pieces you've ever created. And maybe this thing is bigger than you even think. So those are all the things, or some of the things rolling around in my head at the point that this thing is on the board. So I'm just telling you that that dress, and there's metallic paint. I've never used metallic paint in a watercolor paint, of course, but
Mhm.
the dimension of this piece, I could go on and on. The Ming chair that she sits in so proudly. I've built that chair. I mean, there's just so many things that you can't possibly.
Mhm.
This is the perfect storm. And I'm just pleased and privileged that I was the guy to
And
bring this thing to light.
tell us a little bit more about her story.
Oh man. Well, she grew up in Alabama, in Selma, and her family was intricately involved with the the bus boycott. And in fact, her husband, an attorney, a late husband, worked on the initiatives, and the all of the I guess the meeting of the minds that was behind that movement. And so she was pivotal in the bus boycott in Selma. Um, she relocated to New Jersey. Uh, I don't know exactly what year it was, but I won't say single-handedly, but probably the biggest input in the desegregation of public schools in this country. Teaneck, New Jersey was the first public desegregated school system. So,
Mhm.
so this is just one of many things,
Mhm.
that Theodora could put on her resume.
Mhm.
And again, every time I hear somebody speak of her, I'm learning something new. It's just a story that's so incredible. It has to be told, and this is the start of that process.
And how did it become a tour? What was the
Well,
thing?
it's becoming a tour. We're working on it, and anybody in the listening audience that might be able to help or support or give us advice, because this is not something I've done before. We're trying to take it nationally, with the hopes that this image will live permanently. Its permanent housing will be at the Smithsonian Institute, the Museum of not natural, of History and Culture, African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. So
Mhm.
that is the goal. And of course, we have a petition, a signing petition that we're trying to get signatures to and for. So folks should go to the website, my website, psmallwood.com, and sign the petition to further this initiative.
Right, and we just have that in the chat now for all of you to see. Please go to the website and sign the petition, because it's a
Sign the
great
petition.
idea. It's a wonderful engagement. You know, art is a powerful thing. It's a really powerful thing. And okay, Phil, thank you so much for talking with us. I'm going to take a few questions now because we got a couple in here, but we don't have a lot of time left. But
Okay.
I think we covered a lot of ground. And we know you so much better now through the work. So I thank you for that. So let's see. I see one question in here that goes back to the landscape painting.
Mhm.
How does one paint a road or a path that looks flat rather than vertical?
Well, see, we're talking about perspective, right? And so with perspective, you almost always you have to determine how many points of perspective are you working with. Are you working with a single point of perspective, a 2-point perspective, 3-point perspective? And of course, this is one of those horizon line kind of questions, right? Uh, and I think what the people are asking is, how do you make the road appear as if it's moving away from you? You're getting closer to it, depending on the nature of the piece, and a lot of that is an easy explanation would be like the railroad track.
Mhm.
Okay, the
Well,
tracks.
maybe we can look at peer pressure while you're saying that. Maybe that
Okay,
would
yeah,
help.
and with the railroad tracks, it's just they go, they go, they go, and there's a point, and it's the point of the horizon line that the tracks meet, and we know in life the tracks never meet, right? They're
Yes.
always parallel to each other. So that's just one of the things that, and it's pretty complicated perspective.
Yeah.
But I think uh, you've got to start with some basics. Distance plays a huge role in your perspective. And of course, as the road is getting further away from you, it's getting narrower in width.
Mhm.
If it's getting closer to you, it's becoming wider in width. And also, if you're working with a camera, one of the things you have to realize too is that the cameras are limited. They're not nearly as sophisticated as the human eye. So
Mm.
people think just the
Mhm.
opposite.
Yes.
But no, your eye is far more depth perceiving and those sorts of things. So that's a difficult question to answer.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. But that was pretty good. You set it up. You set it out. So another question is, tell us a little about your commissions. How does a person approach you to paint them?
well, you got to contact me.
And they can contact you at psmallwood.com.
Yes, they can.
And
Uh,
that's Philip with one L. I love
uh, yes, Philip with one L. The commission process typically is, uh, and you should have the consult before you decide whether or not to move forward. Because some people will can the idea of a commission just automatically assuming it's too expensive, or that I won't be able to afford it. But that's not necessarily true. And one of the parameters of the commission work is obviously a budget. So as an artist, I have to work with what's given. So not every commission is $50,000. So I would say have the consult, ask the questions, find out if it's something you want to pursue, but don't dismiss it just based on I won't be able to do this.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to ask the questions. And
Mm-hmm.
and most artists are willing, if you come to me and you say, I have a budget of X, and I say, well, that's probably not a budget that will sustain a painting, but that maybe is a budget for a beautiful drawing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So there's a lot of ways to get to a win-win. So I
Mm-hmm.
just want the people out there to know, have the conversation, not necessarily with me, have it with your artist of choice, but have it. Don't dismiss the notion before having the consult.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Might
Mm-hmm.
be more affordable than you think.
Right. That's wonderful to hear. And what are other ways in which people can acquire your work? Are you with a gallery? How will people see your work?
I'm right now. I'm self-represented. That hasn't been the case for practically my entire career, but now is one of those times that
Mhm.
I've taken this thing on and say, okay, that's what we're going to do. So they can reach out to me directly. There's no gallery involved at this point,
Mhm.
and we can talk. We can have a discussion and see where it goes.
Okay. Well, that's one of the reasons we like to have these shows. We like to talk to artists and we like to get intimate knowledge of how to buy their work. And also just to learn more about this thing that artists do that's called careers, and how they actually sell their work and make them. So that's a really helpful thing to know. All right, I think we're going to wrap up. Let's see if they have any. You have lots of comments in the chat, so we'll save that for you. But they, commenting on the dimension and the texture. One person says the railing shadow on the steps. They really like that. The bricks are brilliant for watercolor, and that comes from an artist. You may know Janine Prim Jones.
I do.
Yeah, yeah, we know her. And, just people saying thanks to hearing you talk about your work. Your work's amazing. Do you offer classes was a question that someone.
No, not at this time. If I could, I'd like to thank a few folks, starting with the Romeo Bearden Foundation
Mhm.
and the Cinque Artist Series. I
Mhm.
want to thank you, Deidre, and Joanne as well. Joanne Bryant Rita. Why I have to look? I don't know. But also Nadal for helping us with the technical piece. And my team, Marley Messina, who has just welcomed home a beautiful baby girl, Macy. In fact, they just got home days ago. So Marley and Tariq are now proud parents. So I
Mhm.
just want to say thank you to them. And also Derek Jones, who masterfully works behind the scenes. And of course, my lovely wife, whom I could never omit, Teresa Oakley Smallwood.
Mhm.
And I think that may be it. And the Bergen County links. Let's give them a shout out. And also, if you folks want to see the image, well, I don't know. I think this might be a sold out event, but the image will be making an appearance at their 50th uh, Mother's Day luncheon here in Bergen County. So,
Okay. Do they sell tickets to that? Can anybody?
I maybe misspoke. I think it's a private event, and I pretty sure it's sold out already. But again, to find out any updates on the tour, what our next stops will be, and all of that good stuff, check in to the website, and we'll be certain to give you that information.
We also want to thank Nadal Canary for his wonderful production behind the scenes, and Joanne Bryant Reed, and all of the folks that we've worked with to bring this to you. And Derek Jones on your team, thank you very much to everyone. And also a special shout out to Harlem One Stop, because we're part of the Harlem Cultural Collaborative and we are on their platform. And you will be able to see this on their YouTube channel later. You can also find this recording on our Facebook page and elsewhere. If you have any problems, you know where to write us, info@beardenfoundation.org. So on that note, I want to thank everyone for joining us from many different places I'm seeing here. And thank you goes to you, Phillip, for sharing your work with us today. It was very enlightening. And just learning about your work has been really good for me and inspiring, I should say, to me.
Well, thank you for having me, Deidre. It was a pleasure.
All right.
And let me just say this too, how important organizations like yours are, because they really, you guys are really the bread and butter of keeping this thing moving. It's an undernourished scenario, and you guys are doing yeoman's work in bringing this to the public. And as an artist, I don't know what I would do without you. So let me just say that my hats off to Romy as well.
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you. You know, with the Cinque Gallery, their efforts, you know, is one of the biggest things that we celebrate in Bearden's legacy, because it's so important to mid-career artists, young artists, artists who have been out there working like you for over 25 years, and you may not have a gallery, but you have a lot to say about your work. And so we see this as a platform for that. And I thank you for acknowledging that work, because we try to continue to do this free to the public, and we're really dedicated to this aspect of our mission. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, on that note, good night to everyone. And we'll see you next time.
Good night.